Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Tonight. I'm your host, Todd, the True Guru Farino, and of course, I will always be joined shortly by Mr. RC Rizza. We had a pretty amazing weekend here for fantasy football in the Blog Talk Radio Leagues. All three Blog Talk Radio Leagues drafted between, I believe it was Thursday and was it Wednesday? Maybe it was Wednesday through Monday. We had all the drafts, or Tuesday, actually yesterday. So it was Thursday, Monday, Tuesday. All three Blog Talk Radio Listener Leagues drafted. We're going to be discussing that heavily today, but we're going to also kind of, it became a great sampling of what is to come from this year's fantasy football drafts. And if you take a look at it from a close standpoint, you're going to notice some oddities. You're going to be able to spot, obviously, a lot of the late sleepers that certainly I and RC value, but some other guys also value. And you're also going to see a trend. And the trend that I saw, I didn't quite fully expect, and I'm going to explain that in a second. I didn't see this really coming because it didn't really, it kind of came out a little bit in some of the mock drafts that I had done, but when you get into a real draft, it changes things. Because in mock drafts, one of the reasons I don't do too many mock drafts, especially when it's not like an expert mock draft, is because a lot of people try strategies, and I do it too. I say, okay, well, let's see what happens if I go with a quarterback in the first round. Let's see how the draft flows. Let's see what happens if I take two wide receivers, first, second round. Let's just see what happens. That's why I don't put a lot of stake in the mock drafts. But what I saw develop in this draft was these three drafts. It was a sampling of three drafts with a lot of super intelligent guys. There are listeners. They better be. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I was supposed to hit a button there, but it didn't work. Anyhow, going on. So we're going to discuss that heavily. We might have, I believe when RC comes in, we might actually even have an aggregate of all three drafts and what the ADP was of all the players at that point. But before we get moving on, I got to go to our sponsor, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you didn't get into one of the Blog Talk Radio Leagues and you still want to take on me, Todd the True Guru Farino, and try to whoop me on a weekly basis, because, try to take me out for the whole season, I'm eventually going to get a licking in. But if you take me on a weekly basis, I guarantee you'll probably win, several weeks. I'm just trying to be curt. Let's take it. Let's go. Let's rock. When it comes to fantasy football, I take it dead serious. I want to win. And is there anything wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with wanting to win? Well, here's your opportunity to win every week and get some money. And it's at fantasyfeud.com. Just like familyfeud.com, Fantasy Feud. Play on words, like I said last week. Just go to my site, Fantasy Football Fetch. Go to our podcast site, Fantasy Football Tonight. We have banners on the site. Just click on one of those banners, and it's going to take you to their free roll page for the week one of the NFL. And they're doing a special. They're giving away $2,500 in prizes for this free roll, and it's for me and my listeners, and I want you guys all in there. After that, I believe the free roll after week one, I believe, will be $500 to $1,000. But it's free. You just sign up. You don't have to put any money down, and you have to, of course, there's a password involved. You have to, when you sign up, use the password Free NFL. Pretty simple. Free NFL. And you get in the league. I'll be playing week one, and it's $2,500 in prizes. I believe, depending on how many people sign up, is how many prizes they'll have. But it's going to be $2,500. So it's free. Get a chance to beat the True Guru. And then we'll go on from there. Every week you'll be able to take me on for free prize money for their free roll. And, of course, you can get involved with whatever other part of fantasyfood.com you want to be in. Just note that, you might be a little disappointed playing me. So check it out, fantasyfeud.com. Like I said, go to any one of my sites, fantasyfootballtonight.com or fantasyfootballfetch.com, and click on the banners and sign up today. Let's get everybody in there. And let's have a rocking time. We will be discussing who wins. If you win, you're going to be announced on the show. Anybody who really finishes in the top 10 is probably going to have some discussion. So we'll be discussing me a lot. Never RC. No, I'm just kidding. I like to talk smack about RC, as he well knows. All right, he's probably in there. Oh, he's here. Uh-oh. You know what? RC made a lot of mistakes in the draft, so I'm going to bring him in with this soundbite.
Ha-ha, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
RC, what's going on?
Yeah, that sums up my draft, I guess.
You're the most modest fantasy football person I've ever met. You dominate most leagues you're in. You make the playoffs in just about every league I'm in with you. So can you cool it a little bit? You had pretty good drafts.
Which one? We've done 3 in 3 nights. So which one are you talking about?
I would say they're probably all pretty good. I thought particularly your last one was smoking. I'm pretty happy with the team that you have going. In your own expert league, so you got a lot to be happy about.
Well, we'll see. I mean, you really never know until the games begin. And one thing about being in multiple leagues, if you have your set of preferred players, probably a good idea is to, and we were talking about this, mix up the players on your different teams. So if things don't go the way that you were expecting or planned, at least you won't have 8 teams that are a complete disaster.
You know what? That's exactly how you have to try to mix it up. I don't quite always do that though. There are specific players, and I was extremely upset. Lockdown, who of course crowned himself champion of the Blog Talk Radio 1 League already. God forbid we have to go through that again. He was robbing me blind the first 2 rounds. I was like, what? He took my Drew Brees, and then he followed up, I believe, round 3 and stole another pick. I think he took A.J. Green. I had my, everybody knows Drew Brees, DeMarco Murray, and A.J. Green. If I can go bang, 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 I'm a pretty happy camper. It's difficult to do that, but I almost was able. I didn't get Drew Brees or A.J. Green. I got the middle guy in there. But we're going to talk about that, and I see we have some information going on here about, an aggregate. Why don't you explain what we're going to talk about before we get into some of the strategies of the draft, this document you put together here about all 3 drafts.
No, this is actually just about the last one we did last night, and this basically what it does is it compares each pick to the average draft position. So it gives you a good indication on if you were able to pick up players that people for some reason were passing on, but yet by virtue of the ADP at least to the extent that that's accurate. Usually it is, but even if it's not, I mean it's a good idea to always while you're drafting be cognizant of the ADP so that. If there's a player that you're really high on and he's going by looking at the ADP in the 7th round, you don't want to reach in the 4th round to get him because you're foregoing another opportunity that you could have grabbed in the 4th round. So basically, what this is essentially looking at each player selected by team and by selection, comparing it to the ADP. And then seeing which ones were the good values and which ones were the reaches. And for example, your best draft value was Austin Collie in the 16th round. And the reason why is because his ADP is about 149, and you picked him at spot 188. Then, for example, you grabbed Randall Cobb in the 14th round, and he was typically going about three rounds before that. So it's a good way to try to evaluate how you did. Conversely, I am notorious at reaching for players, and for example, I took Golden Tate in the 13th round, and I could have waited until the draft next Thursday to take Golden Tate. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you want to
you could have. I'm just being honest.
So you want to try to stay away from that, but I never really abide by my own rule. I also did that, for example, with David Wilson. I took him in the 7th round. I could have waited another 2 rounds. Kendall Wright, I took him in the 11th round. I could have waited to about the 14th. Shane Vereen, I took about almost 4 rounds too early. And, I mean, these are just guys that I wanted to make sure I got. And but, the thing is I probably passed up on some players I could have gotten and then could have grabbed these guys as well. So.
All right, well, we're going to get into this draft especially, and we're probably going to try to analyze and just shred like a piece of paper. If I don't want to shred my notes here. I was going to do that right in the microphone. Lockdown's team. But before we get to that, I want to discuss a couple of things that came out. We had discussions about this yesterday because we were talking during the draft and we were analyzing it afterwards as we do all three drafts. And the first thing that we both noticed, you and I noticed, is, at least why I brought this up, I was like, in most normal drafts, for at least for the last 3 or 4 years, I would say, I've always been not really caring too much about taking running backs in the first round. It's like, yeah, if you got one of the first 3 or 4 or 5 picks, you got to kind of do that, But this year kind of changed, and I noticed in all 3 drafts that I was able to, and almost forced to, in most of them, I think except for one of them, take running backs in the first round and still find amazing depth at not only quarterback, but particularly at wide receiver. And one of the notes, one of the thoughts that you brought up was how the draft is getting shifted by so many quarterbacks moving into the first round. And there's really not a lot of receivers in the first round. There's one wide receiver being taken in the first round. We all know who that is, Megatron. So when you walk away from that first round, you only see, at best, 2 quarterbacks and 1 wide receiver leaving it, yet people are able to get away with murder taking running backs and still wait. I mean, is that a philosophy this year, after what you've seen? You had 3 drafts that you got the draft in. After what you've seen, do you agree with that philosophy that you should go, if you can't get Aaron Rodgers, if you can't get Drew Brees, just go running back, and there'll be guys out there for you later?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in the drafts I've done so far this year, I have very infrequently I have not grabbed Aaron Rodgers in any draft so far because I mean, as great as he is, and I think he's worth a top 5 pick, but I just can't do it. I'd rather I've even taken Calvin Johnson over Aaron Rodgers, but I just can't justify taking him. But I mean, if you really want him, that's where you got to take him in top 5. I think Tom Brady's a little bit overvalued. He's in the top 10. I think Breeze is a little overvalued. He's in the first round. He's in the top 12. Then after that, the earliest quarterback I've taken is in the early second round, Cam Newton. Stafford's going in about the mid-second round. And then after that, after those top 5 guys, there's a huge cliff. And essentially you can wait till the end of, till I think the beginning actually of the 4th round to get Michael Vick. And then after him is Eli Manning. And those 2 guys to me are a little bit overvalued, so I wouldn't even touch them there. And like we were talking about last week, I think if you miss out on Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, Newton, or Stafford, then I think you should wait until around beginning of the 5th round to start considering a quarterback. And that's where you can get Matt Ryan, Tony Romo, Phillip Rivers, Robert Griffin. And then even later than that, when you're moving into the 10th round area, 9th and 10th round area, you can get Jay Cutler, Matt Schaub. So as long as you get, I think one of those guys, and we're not mentioning Roethlisberger. I mean, he's also before Cutler. But the point really is to be aware of is that after those top 5 quarterbacks, don't worry, just wait till around the 5th round and I would grab Ryan, Romo, Rivers, Griffin, just target one of those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what happened to me is I couldn't get a quarterback early in last night's draft. And again, we had 3 drafts over the weekend, but in Blog Talk Radio League 1, which is the one we had yesterday, I was unable to get a quarterback, and I finally in the 5th round went with Eli Manning. And I'm just looking at the team, and I'm going, that was pretty cool that I was able to, miss out on the Stafford, which I really like this year, miss out on Drew Brees, who is really the kingpin quarterback. I'd rather just avoid Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I just got a bad feeling about him this year, not for his career, but for this year. And I wasn't able to get the Cam Newtons or the Tom Brady's. I just wasn't able to do that with the people that I wanted to get. And when you're able to grab it, and what I did is and another thing I did here too in this Blog Talk Radio draft, which might have thrown some of these guys off, is I went 5th round Eli Manning, 7th round came right back around and took Tony Romo. Went and grabbed 2 NFC East quarterbacks, and I said, you know what? If one doesn't turn out, the other one probably will. And I'm sure Eli Manning will be fine. I'm sure Tony Romo will be fine. Obviously, staying healthy is the key here. But that was one of the tricks. And once I realized that, number one, there's just a insane amount of depth at wide receiver that I was like, okay, you know what? I know the quarterback's going to be there. I can go down and I can get Josh Freeman probably all the way down in what is he going in, Josh Freeman? Right around the I know I got him in one of the leagues.
Around the 10th, 11th round.
Yeah, I got him in the 11th round in Block Talk Radio 3 league. And, I think people kind of underestimate him. I want to talk about him a little bit. He's one of my late sleepers, and we're going to discuss a few of those as we bring them up. But since we're talking about quarterbacks, why aren't people falling more in love with Josh Freeman? 2 years ago, he had a great rookie season. I believe it was rookie season. And, but just had a fine season. Nothing super exciting, but showed a lot of skill. Kind of took a step backwards last year. But this year now, he's added Dallas Clark to the mix. He obviously is an aging tight end. I think he's in, I believe, his 8th or 9th year. Not super old, but still old. But still Dallas Clark, and hopefully he's healthy. But they also added Vincent Jackson, and of course they still have Mike Williams. So he has, and then they added Doug Martin as their young running back to go along with their slew of other running backs they have. This is an offense that could be poised to be a high-scoring offense. Why isn't Josh Freeman getting more respect?
Well, it was just very alarming, like the drop-off, if you want to call it it's not even a sophomore slump, is it? Because that was his third year. Obviously, he played part of his rookie year, but the drop-off from, when you look at his numbers, the thing that was really alarming was his TD to interception ratio. He went from the year before, 2010, 25 TDs to only 6 interceptions, which is sparkling. And then last year, he threw 22 interceptions to only 16 touchdowns. I agree with you. I think he's being overlooked. He certainly isn't as bad as, some of it was the team dynamics. I think Mike Williams obviously kind of took the year off. And he probably did need a veteran to push him, like Vincent Jackson. Vincent Jackson should make a very big difference. He's getting a little bit older, but he still looks like an impact player. I'm not sure how much of an impact Dallas Clark is going to make, but certainly he can't hurt. Because remember, they had Winslow there last year, so that's about equivalent, I would say. But one thing that might be overlooked also is adding Doug Martin. I think adds legitimacy to their running game. Blunt is a pretty good running back, but he was another guy that seemed to take the year off. So now they do have a legitimate running threat. And when you look at Josh Freeman's yardage, it was about the same, about 3,500, which is respectable. It was really that TD to interception ratio, and if he improves on that, then he should go like five rounds earlier. So,
I got to figure that he will. He has like I said, he has a stable tight end. He has another threat on the other side, and that also to me brings up Mike Williams, who I think is a sleeper in his own right, because he was normally the big target there. They had like I said, they had a lot of those other kind of junky receivers on the other side of him, so he was pretty much the focal point of that offense in the passing offense at least. And now he's going to kind of fall to the wayside as most teams are going to come in thinking Vincent Jackson. I think that bodes very well for a Mike Williams. But obviously that'll be something we'll have to see, unless you think he'll take another year off.
No, it wasn't like he had a disastrous year. He still had, about 50 yards a game. He only scored 3 times, and, part of that you can blame Freeman for whatever was going, but he's another guy. He dropped off from 11 touchdowns to 3. So that's why, he is almost completely off the radar this year. But these are the kind of guys that, it's smart to target, because he may not bounce back, but, at least you're getting him at a good value where, last year he was like a 4th-round pick. This year you can get him, Mike Williams, I'm talking about, probably in the 12th round. So I really for that kind of value, it's worth the gamble.
Now, by the way, in the chat room, I asked Primetime what was the deal with him drafting all of the old wide receivers, Terrell Owens and Randy Moss in particular, were two of the old wide receivers. He also added Reggie Wayne. And then he had the comment that he made about my wide receivers, where he said that mine were too hit and miss. They are big play guys, and that's it. So I looked at my wide receivers, and I'm just thinking that analysis is a little off, because I seem to think that he's probably a little upset because he got stuck with Reggie Wayne. But I'm looking at, I have Victor Cruz. He's just a catcher. You know, I mean, he does have the big plays, but he's just a pass catcher. He turns big plays out. Mike Wallace is the #1 target on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Should be reporting to camp this week. Should have no problems, even if he misses week 1 for some odd reason. Now, Deshaun Jackson is a big play receiver. Yes, he is. He's having a fantastic camp. According to everybody in that camp, he's also had really a personality change. You know, he's kind of seen the error of his ways. I'm hoping that he's going to be a little bit more of a productive player. But nonetheless, I'll take 2 touchdowns and 180 yards in a couple, 3 or 4 weeks of the year, whatever, when he catches those amazing games he does. And then, of course, I added Mike Williams later in the draft after round 9. And then my deep wide receivers were Mario Manham and Randall Cobb. And then I think, did I have another one in there? No, that's my wide receivers. So I'm looking at that. Now, you saw that group. So you have Cruz, Wallace, Jackson, Williams, Manham, and Cobb. Now, I just want your opinion. You be honest. To compete against that is Dez Bryant, Reggie Wayne, Justin Blackmon, and then Randy Moss and Terrell Owens. And Michael Crabtree, I mean, that throws it out there. And also he has Austin Collie. He obviously has a lot more wide receivers than not a lot more, but I think it looks like 1 or 2 more than me. So just to talk to Art, back to prime time, which group would you think has the edge going into week 1?
I love Randall Cobb, but I think Primetime has a point there where you're really not sure what he's gonna do, because that's a pretty crowded rotation. Donald Driver is once again kind of asserting himself. I don't think he's going to be able to hold off Cobb, but for now it looks like there's a chance he will. Deshaun Jackson is a bounce back candidate, very good one at that. Victor Cruz in the 3rd round was really a great value. Mike Wallace should report soon, and if he does, he has to learn a new offense. I think he's going to open the season a little bit slow, because he hasn't obviously been in camp. So that he's a little bit risky, but certainly, after the first month, I mean, he should be back to his old self. Mike Williams, we just discussed. Mario Manningham is a calculated risk. He's probably going to be. I mean, unless Randy Moss has some kind of renaissance, he should really be the #2 guy in San Francisco, which really isn't such a great position. I mean, the #2 guy in San Francisco is like the #6 guy in Green Bay, because you've got Alex Smith throwing to you, and they're all about defense and running. And then compared to prime time, Austin Collie, you got him, we just talked about before, like a great spot. He's having some injury issues. So is Dez Bryant, but Dez Bryant's going to be pretty solid. Justin Blackmon, college hero. He looked pretty good in the first preseason game. We're going to have to see, I don't know, he's an interesting receiver where he's really all about pushing cornerbacks around. He doesn't really seem to be a guy that's going to gain like separation just based on shifty moves and being able to accelerate. He's more about trying to outmuscle the cornerback, and so he's a little bit risky, I think, because the NFL are going to have sturdier cornerbacks and more savvy cornerbacks. So we'll see how that works out. But in the 9th round, he's a pretty good value. Now, as far as Reggie Wayne, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss, I mean, I personally wouldn't have touched them. They might have something left in the tank. Certainly Reggie Wayne, I think, does. It wasn't like he dropped off about 400 yards from what he did in 2010 last year. He's 34 years old now, so he's really reaching the point where, he's going to slow down, and certainly, last year he was like a 2nd-round pick, and this year you can get him in the 7th, so he's certainly, reliable. I mean, he's going to be a key part of that offense without question. As far as Terrell Owens and Randy Moss, I just simply wouldn't touch them. I just don't. I mean, we saw Randy Moss, his charade, the last season when he was trying to play, and he just was invisible. And Terrell Owens, I kind of feel the same way about it. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure Terrell Owens for the Seahawks wasn't even close to being designated as a starter. Ben Obamnu, or whatever that guy's name is, and I believe Golden Tate were designated as a starter. So Terrell Owens is going to come off the bench if the season started today.
And I think that's where they're going to probably sit most of the year. I mean, they're there to possibly have an impact, but we've seen the Randy Moss experiment on multiple teams. So, I mean, if he gets away with something there and gets a little bit of magic out of his, genie bottle with either of those players, and I think Terrell Owens has the better chance. I mean, Terrell Owens has child support to pay, so he's going to play hard. But I mean, he's on a crappy team and a crappy offense that's focused on the run, and it's and then you look over at Randy Moss, and it's not like he has Tom Brady throwing to him; he has Alex Smith throwing to him, and Randy Moss basically signed on the same team that signed Mario Manningham, who really can in my opinion is a better receiver than Randy Moss is now. I mean, if you look at them both right now, that's why they signed Mario Manningham. He's a great deep threat and can get open, and hopefully will do that for the Giants. That being said, though, listen, when you're drafting a fantasy team, this was my philosophy going into the year. I've noticed that you have the big deal players. You're going to have the players who will get one catch for 8 yards some weeks, and then other weeks they'll have 2 touchdowns for 140 yards. Okay, great. You know what I want, RC? I want to have a good, stable quarterback, like a Drew Brees. He's going to give you 20 to 30 points every week. You just know it's going to happen, outside of maybe one bad week that he'll have all year. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, those kind of guys. You get the stable quarterback, then you get yourself a couple of, decent, really good, just really good running backs. You get some of those, if you can get, obviously, a top-rated one, you can get one of those. But if you can't, you can get DeMarco Murray. You can go down the lines. Even Willis McGahee, not too shabby, going a little bit further in the draft. Then you turn around and you get your big hit players. And listen, if I have 1 week where Victor Cruz tees off and gets me 30 points at wide receiver, there's a very good chance with the other stability, the rest of the stability on my team, that I'm going to be able to pull off wins, as opposed to thinking that I'm going to get a huge week out of Deshaun Jackson, a huge week out of Mike Wallace, and a huge week out of Victor Cruz. I don't need huge weeks out of all 3 of them. I need a huge week out of at least one of them every week, and then at least the other ones just do average. And I should be able to be in competition every week. And that's what I was kind of aiming for when I was going for the Mike Wallaces. I really wasn't thrilled about taking Victor Cruz. I got to be totally honest with you. I mean, I like Victor Cruz. He had an explosive year last year. Obviously, he's going to be a big threat this year. But it was just kind of the way it fell for this draft. I kind of felt at that point in round 3 that I had to go with him. My original pick in round 3 was going to be A.J. Green, and I lost that. The pick directly before me to lockdown, I lost A.J. Green. One of 2 of his only of his good. He only had, I think, 2 good picks in the whole draft, and those were Drew Brees and A.J. Green. So I'm kidding with him. But anyways, that's why I kind of went with Victor Cruz. Out of all the drafts I've had this entire year, I haven't touched on Victor Cruz. I would have liked A.J. Green. But if you want to look at that, I mean, you can look at Des Bryant. He's a big game threat. He's a guy who can have a big game. He's a guy who can not show up at all. You can look at Akeem Nicks. He has big games. He falls off the map. I mean, Calvin Johnson will always have big games. He's not even in the competition of the talk here. So when I hear talk like that about those kind of guys, even Greg Jennings will have a 2-touchdown game. Next game, he'll have 2 catches for 16 yards, and Dory Nelson will catch everything. So that's across the board. So if I'm going to worry about that, then everybody has to worry about their wide receiver core because of a big game threat. So I think he's a little upset because he got out-drafted and out-dueled, but Primetime will heal, and he will be there the whole season, and he will make the playoffs. So I'm not really too concerned about it.
Oh yeah, he'll kick your ass with pickups. But
absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I mean, you really want to go after players that I try to go after players that can carry you in any given week where, you know, you're going to have a couple players that just do close to nothing, no matter who they are. I mean, even Calvin Johnson last year had a game where he caught only 3 passes for 29 yards. It happens. You know, granted, the rest of the season was pretty. You can't pick another game all year where he didn't at least get like 80 yards receiving. So he was pretty damn consistent for a receiver. But in general, I mean, if you're not Calvin Johnson, you're going to be vulnerable to those weeks where even if you're running back, depending on the running back rotation or the craziness of your coach, you're going to have weeks where, you know, nothing's going to happen. So you want the guys that, like Deshaun Jackson, I mean, frankly, where it didn't happen last year, but he's the kind of guy that in any given week he can carry your team because he's the type of guy that can, you know, I mean, we've seen him go for 200 yards and 3 scores. And then the rest of your team doesn't have to do anything, and you're probably going to win. So
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean, how many times last year were there receivers who caught 3 touchdowns in a game and put up 40-plus points for your fantasy team, and all the rest of your team had to do was just do something? That's how I felt. Like the rest of your team just had to do pretty much the average of what they were supposed to do. Even some of them could have flopped. And you still putting up 40-plus points out of one wide receiver, you know, and he did it 2 or 3 times last year. You know, several wide receivers did that last year. I mean, I won a lot of games last year just because of A.J. Green in my home league alone. I won a ton of games because of LaShawn McCoy last year with all the big games he had with touchdowns. So that's what you're looking for. So to kind of go after the big play hit or miss, I don't care. If you have 5 hit or miss, I mean, I think DeMarco Murray is not going to be, as long as he stays healthy, he's not really a hit or miss guy. I think no matter what, I mean, all running backs are going to have their bad games. We know that. But, I mean, I think that DeMarco Murray is pretty much going to be a hit. Darren McFadden, there's a hit or miss guy. I mean, Darren McFadden can wrap off 200 yards and the next week only put up 50 yards. But the week he puts up 200 yards and 2 touchdowns is a week it's going to be hard to beat me. And, oops, I hope Victor Cruz doesn't put up 2 touchdowns, you know, and 150 yards that same week, because then you're really going to be in trouble. So it's those are the kind of teams, and really, as you know, I'm trying to give that advice for the show, as I'm trying to say, go out there, get as many big hit guys as you can get, because, you know, the odds will be there that if you have enough of them, that you're likely going to get a very good game out of one of them. And if you get a very good game out of 3 or 4 of them, which will probably happen too, you'll probably have a week where you put up 200 points in your league. I mean, it's been done all the time. You're going to see that. You're gonna see it a lot, and that's what I'm aiming for here. And I cannot wait for the week that I get to play. I circle every year. I just circle primetime and now lockdown and you. And hopefully I'll get some big plays those 3 weeks.
I can't wait. I hope I'm the recipient of your big plays.
Now, what I'm going to do for you today is I'm going to go through a team roster in a minute, and I want you to tell me how well of his draft you thought he did, break down his running backs, break down his quarterback, blah, blah, blah. But before we do that, I want to talk about the running back situation in the draft, where if you, I mean, you guys can obviously go to Mock Draft Central and check out their ADP. It's the best source, you know, obviously besides our own. But if you check it out, you know, everybody knows who the top running backs are. Okay, everybody knows that, you know, basically the first 6 running backs in the draft, which, by the way, I mean, I put that article out last week about DeMarco Murray being the #1 draft pick. He has conveniently moved into the ADP as a #1 draft pick. I'm very happy about that. And so getting him in the 2nd round, you know, yesterday was, you know, great for me. But if you look at the top, you know, getting past those top running backs, you start getting into those middle-tier running backs, which they really shouldn't be middle-tier running backs. Talking about, you know, Maurice Jones-Drew, Matt Forte, Adrian Peterson, Marshawn Lynch, Jamal Charles. Those guys really, to me, are top-tier running backs, except for maybe Marshawn Lynch. But, yeah, I kind of like him. He worries me. But getting later in the draft, I want you to, you know, talk about some of these guys. Like we were talking about Doug Martin. You know, rookie, we'll see what he can do. But what's going on? One of my later sleepers, and it's not much of a sleeper, is Ryan Williams out with the Arizona Cardinals. He's having, you know, so far a good You know, he hasn't done too much in preseason. I think he has one game, I think 5 yards, 25 carries, 25 yards. But he's looked sharp. The coach Wisenhunt is very happy with his progress. Beanie Wells is still progressing from his knee surgery that he had, and I think he's always going to have knee problems. I don't think Beanie Wells is going to have a very long career in the NFL unless he can magically heal. But that running back battle right there, RC, you like both guys, but you got to pick one. Who do you pick? Do you take the Beanie Wells who's being drafted 2 or 3 rounds before Ryan Williams, or do you wait 2 or 3 rounds and get Ryan Williams and keep your fingers crossed?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been on the Chris Wells bandwagon for a couple of years, and even last year when it was really him and nobody else. I mean, there was nobody that I can recall really legitimately competing with him. He was a bit of a letdown, and it just seems that knee is very problematic. And of course, he's coming out of the gate in preseason this year. There's still question as to. I think he's going to finally make his preseason debut, but I just don't trust him, and I would wait for Ryan Williams. He actually looked pretty good in his first action of preseason. He went for 25 yards and scored. Actually, says he feels great, and I think he's being overlooked because no one knows what to expect from him because no one has ever seen him. He very early last season blew out his patella tendon, or whatever that injury was, and so no one really, recalls what they saw of him, in college. But he's definitely going to be in that mix, and it's going to eat into Chris Wells' value, and I think he should be going higher than 117, but he would be the guy to target as far as I'm concerned with the Cardinals.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I think Ryan Williams will be the starter. Very well could be the starter by the opening of the year. Obviously, I think they'll go with a sort of a committee. And you know how Wisenhunt is. He's an offensive-minded coach, and I certainly think that when it comes down to it, he's going to go with the best option he has. And he has the beat-up Beanie Wells, and he has the young Ryan Williams, who's again, he is healing from the knee surgery, but he's young, and he could take a little bit more of a pounding. Not that Beanie Wells is super old or anything. He just has 2 bad knees, and that's just a problem. I'm going to give you a question here, because I had this question posed, not this question, but this decision posed to me in your draft, just in my last pick a few hours ago, and I'm not sure if you saw who I took, but if you do, don't mention it right now. Who would you take out of, if you had the choice between Ryan Williams? I was staring down the barrel. I needed another running back, and I was staring down the barrel of Ryan Williams and Michael Bush of the Chicago Bears. Which one would you have gone with if you had the choice of those 2 guys as a deep sleeper running back? Not deep. I'm sorry, just sleeper running back, not deep.
Michael Bush. For me, it would really depend on where they're going and average draft-wise. Michael Bush is going about a round earlier than Ryan Williams. So to me, that's pretty comparable. I prefer Ryan Williams a little bit over Michael Bush because with Michael Bush, I think he's definitely going to carve out a role for himself. They're talking about he's going to be maybe the close to exclusive goal line back, and he's probably going to be getting at least a few carries a game. But I think when Matt Forte is running well, and Matt Forte is a much better receiver than Michael Bush, so right there you can probably forget about getting real significant time on third downs in terms of Michael Bush. So it's going to be Forte on third downs. Forte most of the early downs, and then Michael Bush just spelling them. So for me, that's really not good enough to supersede Ryan Williams' potential.
Well, here's the funny thing about this is I took so I'm going to disagree with you slightly because I took Michael Bush, and I'll explain why in a second. Well, in the very next pick, Ryan Williams went.
Did you have Matt Forte?
No, I do not. This was a draft where I didn't get running backs forever. This is your draft where I went literally forever without getting running backs, and so far I've now ended up with Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, Willis McGahee, Ben Tate, and then of course now I have Michael Bush. The reason I liked Michael Bush was this. you're going to have this battle going on between Ryan Williams and Beanie Wells. Do I think Ryan Williams should be the starter in there? And of course I should. I think he should automatically be the starter. But, again, there is the concern of his injury and, how much torque he's going to be able to put on it and, and if it's going to, it's already a little sore, how it's going to feel out. Plus he does have to dethrone Beanie Wells, which seems likely but not for sure. With Michael Bush, he's a touchdown vulture. And I remember last year when Forte was healthy, we'll get to that in a second, that Forte got stuck at the goal line a lot of times. I mean, Forte lost a lot of touchdowns because Cutler was forced on 3rd and 1 to throw it in there, and, of course, that didn't even work. Or even on 4th and 1, they got stopped and the other team got the ball back. That's how football works on 4th and 1 if you get stopped, just in case you didn't know. But that being said, add in the fact that Forte has never really been able to remain healthy. He's always either playing hurt or, not always, I don't take that back. He plays hurt a lot, or he's injured, 2 or 3 or 4 games. So I think there's a good possibility. We saw Michael Bush fill in very well for Darren McFadden. I think he's a great pass catcher. I know Forte's better. There's no competition there. But Michael Bush is definitely going to be the 3rd down back in Chicago because he can do that. He showed it in Oakland. I don't know why you would think he can't do it in Chicago. And most teams do that to spell their running back. And remember, it's about the number of plays you're on the field. And I know you're a statistics guy, and these coaches and these general managers and these entire coaching departments on the team, whatever you want to call it, staff. Thank you. Thank you for the help there, RC. The whole coaching staff sits here and says, how much does the risk go up for injury for the more plays that our guy is on the field? And and so there becomes a time when, I think that's kind of why the NFL a while ago shifted to this 3rd down back strategy. Even though you have an ace in the hole, a running back, you still, in a lot of cases, take him out for a secondary running back on 3rd down who apparently, and I'm using the quotes here, is a better pass catcher.
Yeah, you covered a lot of stuff there. The things to like about Michael Bush, like you're saying, Matt Forte was not effective at the goal line. Now, some of that, it's not like Matt Forte is Javad Best and he's undersized and he's really not suited to run through defensive tackles. Matt Forte is pretty good size. I kind of wonder how much of that was Mike Martz's play calling, not to find a scapegoat, but Matt Forte, is not the most effective goal line guy, but I doubt he's as terrible as he showed last year. And I think some of that was Mike Martz's play calling. But certainly what's going to happen this year, the plan looks to be where Michael Bush is going to be the designated goal line guy. So you got to like that about him. He's also very nimble for a big running back. I mean, he's pretty impressive. He can bounce outside. So it's not like he's just a plotter who's just going to fall forward for a couple of plays and then they're going to take him out. He actually has the potential to do some damage. So, and so it's really close between Michael Bush and Ryan Williams. I can't say you made the wrong choice. It could very well be an awesome choice. Michael Bush could easily score 10 touchdowns this year.
It was not an easy choice, and I love them both. I just had to make that decision. And I elected to go, which obviously, if you look at the ADP, like you said, it's about a round earlier. I'm not alone on this. I'm also a little bit worried about the Cardinals' offense. I mean, granted, Beanie Wells was able to have some decent games last year, running amok in that division, or at least with the Rams. That being said, it's still, they don't really have a surefire power quarterback. So they have a running game, and I'm sure it's going to do fine. And I'm telling everybody, hey, if you have a chance to draft Ryan Williams late in the draft, mid-rounds, whatever, past round 10, snatch him up. Do it right away. He's going to be there. Maybe not quite round 10, maybe like around 9. But the point is get him. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I'm just saying out of those two with this league that I'm in, I like the guy that I can put in there. And this is something I talked to you about yesterday, too. You had an issue with Ben Tate. And I'm like, are you crazy? I think I literally said that to you. I said, Ben Tate put up 900 yards last year and 4 touchdowns and really only filled in for Arian Foster in 2 games. Now Arian Foster's known for being a little bit injury prone, not missing a whole lot of games. But if he misses 2 or 3 games and you get a huge, 3 games out of Ben Tate, awesome. But, it's the fact that he gets about 10 to 12 carries per game, even when Arian Foster is in there. It's the rotation that Kubiak uses out there. So he is a great fill-in. He's not going to be a starter for your team, but when you have a bye week, and I have DeMarco Murray in the bye week, I can plug Ben Tate in there. He might run a touchdown and get 60 yards, and and put up a reasonable amount of points for me and keep me, possibly win that game, even though my number 2 draft pick is on the bye. So that's what I'm thinking about with Michael Bush. That's the whole point. I'm going to now come back to Michael Bush. Is that he's a guy you could plug in there and might get 2 touchdowns and 15 yards and 1 catch in a game because that's what he does. He comes in at the goal line and scores. But we're running out of time, so I want to bring up before we get off the air. We actually have a decent amount of time. Never mind. I'm sorry. I thought we were a little bit later in the show. So if you want to defend Ben Tate, if you have the right now to take back your comments on Ben Tate. Or if you don't want to take back your comments on Ben Tate, we can make a bet.
I don't know what the bet would be. The only problem I have with Ben Tate, I mean, he's a talented enough running back, and certainly if Arian Foster went down, he'd be extremely valuable. It's just that last year, there was half the games he had under 10 carries. Now, granted, he happened to do pretty good things with those under 10. He overall averaged over 5 yards a carry last year. That includes the games where he got under 10 carries. Really, he did most of his damage when he got above 10 carries. He had four games with over 100 yards, and that's when 2 of them were opening the season when he was the starter. So for me, he's just not a, there are some platoon situations where it's kind of consistent. Like, I think New England's platoon situation might be more reliable. I think that the difference between Ridley and Vereen are pretty close, so I think we're going to see a lot of those guys. I think this is a situation where if Foster's running well and it's a close game, and I see no reason why the Texans are going to blow anyone out, I think you're going to mostly see Foster. Not to say that Tate doesn't have a role there. Like you're saying, he's going to get at least his 5, maybe 10 carries. But, for me, that I'd rather go after a guy with a higher upside.
Well, I know. I mean, he's obviously a guy meant for the bench, and in those games where they got less carries, I mean, that tends to be games where they were doing bad. I mean, there's a game he got 5 carries, and Arian Foster ran 22 carries for 65 yards. I believe that was against Jacksonville. So, I mean, but he did have 8 games where he had, and I say also, I mean touches. I mean, if he has 9 carries or 10 carries and then catches 2 passes, that's 12 touches. But he had 8 games last year where he did that. The 2 that he started for him. But the point is that, again, Ben Tate is not a guy. I mean, at that point in the draft, there's really not a lot of starting running backs left. I don't think there's any starting running backs left at that point in the draft, at least any worth taking. So getting to Ben Tate, like I said, you always got to protect Arian Foster. If he gets hurt, Ben Tate on any other team is the number 1 running back. On any other team. Okay, I can't say quite any other team because, other teams have good running backs. But on a lot of teams in the NFL, he's the number 1 running back. He would dethrone, let's put him on the Cardinals. He would be the starting running back on the Arizona Cardinals. So that being said, I mean, we'll see how Ben Tate performs. I mean, he put up 942 yards last year and 4 touchdowns. I think he can supersede those touchdowns. I don't know if he could pass those yards, but I wouldn't expect him to pass up 900 yards again, unless, of course, Foster gets hurt. All right, well, let's talk about one more deep sleeper. I keep saying deep sleeper. I really mean sleeper. I apologize if I keep saying that. Kevin Smith. This is a guy people are ignoring, RC. I mean, he had a phenomenal year last year, but then got hurt again, and then the Detroit Lions had to go on a passing frenzy with Maurice Morris and company at the running back by committee. But Kevin Smith is back. Javad Best is not going to start the season, and there's a slight possibility that Javad Best may not play ever again. I mean, there's a slight possibility, but whether or not he comes back at some point is not even relevant right now. Kevin Smith is going to start the season and play at least the first 4 to 6 games with the Detroit Lions, and yet he is falling way into the draft, and people can get an unexpected starting running back at around, where am I seeing him down here? right around the seventh, eighth round. Are you high? Not only do I want you to talk about Kevin Smith, but I also want you to talk about C.J. Spiller, another running back that could end up having a huge season, who people are getting very late. Looks like he's going around. His ADP is around 5, but I'm not buying that. He's been going later than that. I mean, I'm just not buying that in the 3 drafts I saw him going. But what do you think about Spiller and Smith?
Not really. I mean, I would give a small edge to Spiller because he's the kind of guy that, Fred Jackson has proved to be pretty durable, but he's getting. I think he's accumulating some mileage, so I think we're going to see more of Spiller this year. I think the Bills are going to be a better all-around team. They're going to be more effective if they're going to be able to run. Nothing wrong with Fitzpatrick as, just a game manager, but he's not going to win games for you. So, if the Bills are trying to build a team similar to, I guess, the Niners, where they're going to focus on running and defense, and Spiller would definitely fit into that, where, I think we'll see more of him, and he definitely has the bigger upside over Fred Jackson. Fred Jackson is, the more reliable player, the more dependable one, but as far as Kevin Smith, I mean, you have to admire basically his determination, his toughness, but aside from that, there's really nothing to get excited about. He's, his clock speed, is not going to strike fear in anyone. He's basically a guy that, for now, I think is really just a placeholder for the Lions until they find somebody better. So, for fantasy purposes, to open the season, yeah, ride him as long as he's doing something. But I think there's going to be a point during the season where you're going to get discouraged with him and, end up wishing you didn't draft him.
I'm gonna tell you this right now. Like I said, I mean, I don't have any confidence that. I mean, because if Javad Best was okay, he would have healed from his concussions from his, I think he had 2 last year. He would have healed from those and, been fine by, preseason. At least not, if not by the week 1. And he's going to open the season probably in the PUP list. So that's just bad news. And I don't think that this year the Lions are going to magically, pull out of their bag of tricks another guy. But this is an offense that's very dynamic, and it's an offense that's going to move the ball down the field, and he's going to be part of it. But we'll see how he does. I'll tell you this right now. I'll make you a bet right now that Kevin Smith outperforms Ryan Williams.
Really?
You want to make it? Just tell me.
Okay, I'll make that.
Are we talking about a wager, Randolph?
How much you want to bet?
The usual amount?
Okay, now the other bet that we have to make is I told this to RC. I said, why are people... Now, everybody knows my favorite player in the NFL. Yeah, I'm still a kid at heart. My favorite player in the NFL is Larry Fitzgerald. Okay, I mean, he's just an awesome guy, and in his heyday, he was really one of the best receivers. He's still a very, very, very good receiver, excellent receiver. But he has some quarterback issues. He has some general team issues. Yet he is the second most drafted receiver in the NFL. And I told you yesterday, I said I think there are receivers that are better than Larry Fitzgerald, and I would pass on him in a heartbeat when he comes up in the draft, which I just never had a chance to take him. But I would pass up on him for these receivers. So I'm going to name 4 receivers off that I think by season end will have better years. And you'll win the bet if any of these 4 receivers do not do better than Larry Fitzgerald, otherwise known as Lamar Fitzgerald to me, because I just think it sounds better. Ready? Brandon Marshall. A.J. Green. Yeah, okay. Brandon Marshall. I'm going to list them off to you. Brandon Marshall, A.J. Green, Julio Jones, and Victor Cruz.
Oh, over Larry Fitzgerald.
Yes, I think all 4 of them will have better numbers by the year end.
I can't argue with any. I can't argue with it. The 2 guys that I think it's like a shirt. The one guy I think it's a sure thing is Julio Jones. I think A.J. Green is very similar to Fitzgerald, now entering his 2nd year. He also is a little bit handicapped by, Andy Dalton did a capable job last year, but he looks to me like a Chad Pennington, which isn't bad, but there's nothing special about Andy Dalton. I mean, he's accurate, he's smart, he makes good decisions, and he's got a great.
You just made a blunder. You do not compare any quarterback to Chad Pennington. As soon as you do that, that quarterback's lost all value fantasy-wise. Why would you do that?
No, I mean Chad Pennington when he was didn't have both his shoulders in a sling. Chad Pennington during his heyday was actually pretty good, but the knock on him was he couldn't really throw it with any velocity more than 25 yards down the field. That's kind of like Andy Dalton, So, but anyway, I can't disagree with any of those guys. Victor Cruz, I think, is going to be more unreliable than Larry Fitzgerald, and Brandon Marshall is the wild card because he could either have a monster season or be a colossal disappointment.
I think that the Bears are going to be competing for the Super Bowl this year. I think they have a very dangerous team. They have a great defense. It's getting a little long in the tooth, but it's still there. And Jay Cutler showed that he can move that ball. They have a great running back. They have great receivers. Ashland Jeffries, am I saying his name right?
Which one?
Did I get their young rookie receiver they drafted? I think I'm blanking on his name. Is it Ashton Jeffries?
Oh yeah, that's right. Ashland Jeffries, right?
Ashland Jeffries. Okay. Really quick, we only have 5 minutes left in the show, so I have a question, and I want to get this really quickly. This roster we're going to go over. Kendall Hunter, Blue Horns FC. By the way, he agreed with you on Ryan Williams. He asked about what do we think about Kendall Hunter. Obviously, he's a backup to Frank Gore, very critical backup because Frank Gore, I don't touch him with a 10-foot pole, and if I had a 12-foot pole, I would say it. I only have a 10-foot pole in my house. So Kendall Hunter seems to be a great backup and somebody you should draft if you have Frank Gore. He's a great running back. My only problem with Kendall Hunter is that the 49ers don't move the ball. In order to get a touchdown as a running back, your team got to get you close because you're not going to break off 50-yarders every day. So as much as I like Kendall Hunter, I don't see him getting a lot of touchdowns even if Frank Gore is hurt. Do you agree with me, or are you in love with Kendall Hunter?
I like him as a player. I'm not really fond of his situation. I think he's a fine running back. He's a little bit small. He's actually a lot bit small. I mean, this is a guy that's only 5'7", 200 pounds. So you wouldn't think that he's going to be that effective around the goal line. But I think if he was pressed into doing that, and he is really the second behind Gore, which is a good situation to be in. And what I meant by a bad situation is that the Niners are well stocked with running backs. They also drafted a guy similar to Kendall Hunter in LaMichael James. He really hasn't made too much of a dent. And then, of course, there's Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs just hurt his knee, so Kendall Hunter is looking, even before that injury, he was number 2 on the depth chart, and he should be able to solidify that. So the only thing not to like about Hunter, certainly when he's played, he's looked great. I think he could actually be effective despite his size around the goal line. Not as effective as Gore. But I like him, and I think he's being overlooked because of the mess in the backfield in San Francisco. But he really does seem to be the clear-cut number 2.
All right. No, he definitely is a clear-cut number 2, and he's a great running back and a great player. Just fantasy value, I mean, I think there's other values out there, but if you get him at a good value, certainly take a shot on him. All right, well, we only got about less than a minute left in the live show, so I want the guys in the chat, if they want, call in, and we'll keep you there on the line so you can hear the show. Here's a team we're going to cover, okay? Let's just start off. The quarterback on this team is Drew Brees, okay? That's fine. No one's going to argue Drew Brees. No one's going to argue A.J. Green. But let's cover the rest of this team. And I'm going to give you their receivers, the receiving core, and you just give me the thumbs up, thumbs down if you like it. Obviously, there's A.J. Green, Percy Harvin, Santana Moss. Wow, this team is getting old right there. You also have Kenny Britt, who, if he's out of jail, he'll play. Nate Burleson. I didn't even know he was still active. I'm kidding. And then Brandon LaFell. So do you like that receiving core?
So Burleson, Moss, Harvin, Britt, LaFell. Who is
And Green.
And who?
And Green. AJ Green.
Oh, AJ Green, sure thing. As far as Harvin, love him, but he's just been handicapped with those reoccurring. He's kind of like the Terrell Davis of receivers, it seems, at this point. So you have to be a little careful about being too optimistic about him. Santana Moss, I think, is being overlooked. He is 33 years old, but there's really no one else on that. I mean, they did sign Garcon, and he's looking pretty good. It looks like Moss will definitely be the slot guy. They're trying to use Hankerson on the other side. I think if Hankerson doesn't turn out, Moss is going to have a pretty good season. Even I think he's got one good year left in his tank, but after that, so for this year, seems like a pretty good pick. LaFell, not crazy about, but he's in a very fortuitous situation with the Panthers because you've got the aging Steve Smith, and then LaFell, who I think is really their number 2 receiver by default. Greg Olsen should have a good year because, really, at this point, it's possible. Without Steve Smith, he's certainly the best receiver on the team, Greg Olsen, that is. LaFell, I think, he's a little bit lead-footed. To me, he seems like he could develop into a very good possession guy. Maybe around the goal line he'll be okay. So, given his situation, I think he's a smart pick this year to see what happens. But definitely limited upside. Burleson, hate him. Titus Young would be the guy that I would. I think the passing of the torch is going to happen this year. Burleson to Titus Young.
Okay, no, I mean, so up or down on his receiving core. I mean, do you have a lot of confidence in his receiving core, or would you run for the hills with that receiving core, or somewhere in between? Just sum it up.
I think it's decent. I forgot to mention Britt. Britt, of course, is the big question mark here. If Britt plays, and stays on say he only gets suspended 3 games even. This is actually a pretty good receiving core. Featured by Harvin, Green, and Britt. Those are 3 really good receivers.
Right. So I'm looking at his receiving core, and this is Lockdown's team. I told you we were going to kind of pick on it, so you have to listen to it afterwards. Obviously I love AJ Green. He stole his first, basically his first and third round draft picks from me, and really upset me because he picked right before me. So I mean, here I think I'm going to get Drew Brees, and which I wasn't sure. And then here I think I'm going to get AJ Green. I didn't get him, so those are great picks. Moss is always pretty decent, but I think with the arrival of Pierre Garcon, Moss days are kind of numbered. He's going to be a little bit less ineffective. I don't care whatsoever about Nate Burleson. Kenny Britt, sure, if he only misses 3 games and he comes out firing all cylinders and Locker is just blasting the ball to him, sure, he'll be an outstanding wide receiver, but that is such a question mark that I don't even want to discuss it. And I like LaFell. I mean, LaFell has the skills to get the job done, but again, he's on a team that has just a ton of running backs, including their quarterback, and I just don't see him doing as much passing away from Steve Smith as would warrant Brandon LaFell, but he is a late pick, so I think he's going to have a lot of trouble at running back. He's going to have a lot of trouble at receiver. His running backs, and this is again where he has a problem. I'm a little concerned. I mean, he has Fred Jackson, but Fred Jackson's coming off the pretty devastating injury he had late last year, which knocked him out for the year. I believe it was his knee. And at the same token, he has C.J. Spiller crawling up as you-know-what to take that job. Now, the Buffalo Bills have all the respect in the world for Fred Jackson, but at some point they're going to turn that key and give the ball to C.J. Spiller. Who knows when that'll be? Then Peyton Hillis. Okay, I get the Peyton Hillis, okay? He was a monster in Cleveland, but now he's going to Kansas City where he's still going to get plenty of carries, but he's going to be backing up Jamal Charles. So I just don't see how you would want to make Peyton Hillis your starting running back when Peyton Hillis is, not even going to pretty much start himself, though he will manage to get, I'm sure he'll get some goal line carries, no doubt. And then he has D'Angelo Williams, who is, effective, but still, he's going to be probably playing behind Jonathan Stewart. They even have Mike Tolbert there now in Carolina, so it's just a mess. Tim Hightower, who cares? I like Mark Ingram. I know you don't like Mark Ingram, and you're going to give me your opinion on it, but I think Mark Ingram, he had a soft year last year. He obviously had some injury issues. But this year, I think that there's going to be a lot more dedication to Mark Ingram than there is going to be as opposed to, Chris Ivory, Pierre Thomas. I mean, Darren Sproles will always be out there to be the pass catcher. But in reality, you're going to see a lot more Mark Ingram this year. I like that. So out of Ingram, Hightower, and then he has Roy Halou, which we have no idea what's really going to end up happening in Washington. They have a slew of maybe you can give us an update on that running back situation. But basically, he has Hightower, Ingram, Halou, and then Hillis and Jackson.
Hightower, Ingram, Halou, Hillis, and Fred Jackson. I love Roy Halou, but like you're saying, that running back situation in Washington is turning into a bit of a mess. We've heard Evan Roycer is going to be the starter. Then Hightower's making it back from the injured list, and now there's a guy that's popping up, Alfred Morris, who's a late round draft pick by Shanahan this year, and you know how he loves to feature his late round draft picks, to make himself look like a genius or whatever. So I'm not sure. But despite it all, Halou is still the most talented. But right now he's battling 2 Achilles injuries on both legs. So we're not really sure when we're going to see him at full speed. So he's risky. To get Hightower to back him up, it seems pretty smart. But with this situation, Halou could be inactive on game day, and you can start Hightower, who is active, and Hightower can get 2 carries, fumble, and then you won't see him the rest of the day. You just have no idea what's going to happen. Hillis, I think, is actually a sneaky good pick this year because playing behind a smaller back like Jamal Charles, who is great when he's playing, but is probably a little bit more vulnerable to injury. Hillis, in contrast to last year, actually looks to have come to play this year. He showed up at camp in shape. He's looking, pretty spry, and I think he's actually going to see significant time, whether or not Jamal Charles is at full health. Ingram, we haven't seen the best of him. He showed last year that he's very good at the goal line. That situation over in New Orleans is really much in flux, where he's not going to be, the primary guy. They're going to mix in with a confounding rotation that you're never going to really know what's going to happen. So I think if he got the chance to be like a primary running back, like a Steven Jackson, he would probably do about 75% as good as that, if that gives you like a gauge, I guess. He's not as, he's not the most talented back, but he certainly is. He's not as good as like Steven Jackson, but he's, I think, 50% better than Sean Green. So, but the problem is you don't know how much he's going to play, and that's really the big issue with Ingram.
Well, that's a big issue also with Hilton. It's not Hilton. I'm sorry, Hillis. I mean, it's like you just don't even know exactly how much he's going to play. And the thing is, he's probably going to spend most of the season, interchanging those guys. I mean, and even with D'Angelo Williams, once he sees what the role is for D'Angelo Williams, I mean, I think D'Angelo Williams will be fine this year. I mean, I think he'll get his carries. But I mean, the bottom line is you have 3 running backs who I feel, and this is in Jackson, Hillis, and D'Angelo Williams, to name 3. Let's go ahead and throw Ingram in there. 4 running backs who none of them are dominant running backs. Hey, this is our running back. Yeah, we're going to spell him once or twice a game, but this is our running back. Clearly, Hillis is not the starter. D'Angelo Williams will be sharing that role with Jonathan Stewart, and if not, Mike Tolbert might get in there. Whether or not he goes in there, fullback or running back, he'll be in there. And, and then, of course, you have Mark Ingram, who is sharing that with not only Pierre Thomas, but also Darren Sproles. So, it just seems to me, and then, of course, you have Fred Jackson, who's going to be sharing time with C.J. Spiller. Maybe he'll be a little bit more dominant on the time, but still there's going to be a little bit more C.J. Spiller than we think there'll be. And then, of course, he has 2 running backs on the same team. So he's kind of like, okay, I'm going to take a shot on, why not grab Evan Royster while you're at it? Just grab all 3 of them. But, but the bottom line is that he's going to have, I don't think, if he's going to win games, it ain't going to be from his running core. Finally, though, we'll wrap it up. He has a great tight end in Jermichael Finley. I think Jermichael Finley's fine tight end for as amongst tight ends, and and then his defenses were Philadelphia and Baltimore, so that's very good. It's kind of weird. He only drafted one quarterback, but he drafted two defenses. RC. He should have drafted two kickers while he was at it.
Oh yeah, it's all about kickers. Yep.
So I have one question for you to wrap this show up on, because I'm coming up on my draft pick in your expert league. And again, this is like an email league, so it takes a little time. I'm a couple picks away, and I got a feeling I'm going to have a choice of these two guys, because it's the two guys I'm considering. Now, right now, I got Drew Brees as my quarterback. And as you know, I normally will draft upwards of 3 quarterbacks in a league. This year, I've only done that one time out of the 3 drafts I've been in, but I always will draft 2. And I like Josh Freeman. He's available. As far as the ADP is concerned, he's on the radar now. He's getting to that area where people are starting to think about him. And I always say that, getting on the radar. It's like if a guy's well below the list, at least his name is not popping up. I mean, guys might be thinking of that guy, but the end result is he's not popping up. Well, both these guys are popped up on the top 30 picks of the ADP, so they're eligible to be snatched up at any moment. And that's Mike Williams, who I kind of would like another receiver, even though I'm pretty strong at receiver in this league. I haven't drafted a receiver in a while in this draft. Or Josh Freeman to get my backup quarterback. Now, I know if I don't take Freeman, that there are several teams, there's actually 2 teams already in this league who have yet to draft a quarterback. And then there's several teams in between my next pick who only have one quarterback just like me and are probably looking to get a backup as well. So looking at that, and my starting quarterback is Drew Brees, obviously. So, I mean, it's not like I need a superior backup. But I do like to get a good one. Who would you take? I'm pretty sure who I'm going to take, but who would you go with? Would you go with Freeman and get your backup quarterback, or would you get your 5th wide receiver of the draft?
Can you tell me who's left at quarterback? I mean, I can find out. Let me see.
It's really getting weak.
Well, yeah, because it really comes down to who's left at quarterback.
Well, you got Roethlisberger and Schaub, the two guys who are very good fill-ins, and really Roethlisberger could end up coming back and having a decent year and be a great starting quarterback. You have Luck still, you have Freeman, you have Dalton, you have Palmer, you have Flacco, you have Fitzpatrick, you have Bradford, and then after that you kind of fall off with the Lockers and the Smiths and those guys, and the Sanchez's.
Yeah, you don't want to touch. Honestly, to me, there are just so many good quarterback choices left. I mean, if you had, say, your next pick, whenever that is, you're stuck with Roethlisberger or Schaub, are you going to be terribly disappointed? If you have to come away with even Bradford or Flacco, or Jake Locker is a little bit risky, but he actually could surprise. Christian Ponder is, I think, a very good number 2 quarterback. Brandon Whedon isn't terrible. So there's a lot of good number 2 quarterbacks left. And then as far as the receivers go, I wouldn't touch Crabtree. Denarius Moore is a little bit risky. Santonio Holmes and Rice, injury risk. Bolden, put a fork in them. Williams. And then after Williams, Cobb, Wright. Yeah, it gets... Honestly, I would take my chance on Freeman being there with your next pick and taking Williams. Not that I think you're right. I mean, both those guys are a good pick, but I think there's a better chance that Freeman's going to be there.
Now, what about throwing Lance Moore into the mix? And that was one of the sleepers that I didn't get to talk about earlier in the show. I kind of had the sleeper list drawn out, and we kind of went off receivers. But I like Lance Moore a little more this year because, as you know, Robert Meacham moved on to the San Diego Chargers, and not that Robert Meacham and him, clearly competed for a role every day, but there's Devery Henderson, there's Lance Moore, there's Marquez Colston, and there was Robert Meacham, and normally you can only have 3 of those guys in the field, so there's a mix matching. But now that Robert Meacham's out of the picture, Devery Henderson is really nothing. He's never really in the picture, even though he's, for some reason, starts every year at wideout and catches 1 pass a game. But that being said, that means I got a feeling that Lance Moore is going to be a more dangerous target this year for Drew Brees. So would you still go with I already know I'm going to take. I've already selected my selection. But what about Lance Moore, sneaking him in there? and him and Mike Williams are like right on top of each other in the ADP.
Yeah, I would give an edge to Mike Williams. I think with Lance Moore, you're right. I mean, he should be a more featured receiver, but you still got Devery Henderson. You've got Graham, who now commands a lot of targets, and of course Colston. It's really Colston and Graham who are the 1-2 guys over there. And it still remains to be seen if the offense is going to click like it has been. So I think Williams, just has more upside. The other thing with any of the Saints receivers, you just have like no idea, except for Colston and Graham. The secondary guys, it's just very difficult to tell who's going to have a good week. Where Williams is going to be on the field, he's going to be depended on, and if everything works out for the Bucs, he's going to, get back into the 10 touchdown range. So, if this will help your decision, so you have the pick after this one, whoever you take, and then I pick right after that, and then before your next pick in the 10th round, I pick before you. I can assure you I will not take Williams or Freeman. So you can strike the probability of 2 picks, off the odds table.
No, I appreciate that. I'm going to definitely go with Mike Williams. I decided a while ago I was going to go with Mike Williams primarily because I just, I don't. The quarterback is at best going to be a one-game. Not maybe at best, but expected to be a one-game fill-in, obviously on a bye week. And Mike Williams could be a guy who could potentially start for me several weeks, depending on matchups. So I'm going to go with Mike Williams. I just want to know what your thoughts were on that, but I do love Lance Moore and Josh Freeman. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Great show. Don't forget to visit RC over at junkyardjake.com. Come check out fantasyfootballfetch.com and, of course, fantasyfootballtonight.com. RC, thank you for another great show.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too. Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.